after being instructed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at the Shashvamedha Ghat in Prayag, Sanatana Goswami took up residence in Vrindavan. And he also indicated, from time to time, you can come to see me in Puri. Lord Chaitanya went to Puri, Sanatana Goswami went to Vrindavan and made that his residence. And after some time, Sanatana Goswami made a pilgrimage, specifically following as best as he could the exact path that Lord Chaitanya traveled, passing through Jharkhand forest and then down. He did some research, and so in Jharkhand forest, it's not so densely inhabited. It's a forest, and here and there, within the forest, there were residents, there were forest dwellers. Nishadas is sometimes used, like Aborigines. But they had their little enclave of people that lived together, and then he would stop at those places, hear from them, what did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu do, what did he say, just absorbed in hearing about his beloved master, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And as circumstance arranged by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's internal potency, it's disclosed later by Haridas, Sanatana Goswami contracted an illness. It's a very specific kind of illness, an illness that he drank some water that he shouldn't have, and his body became infected with sores on his body, on the skin. And there's, Prabhupada describes, there's wet itches and dry itches, and this was the wet kind, weeping sores. So this pus or some liquid that was yucky and smelly was coming from his body. And he was thinking, oh, this is terrible. Because he knew, from the very first that they encountered one another, when Sanatana Goswami had left the government service of Nawab Hussain Shah, Lord Chaitanya, omniscient, knew that he was outside the door, told his servant, go bring the sadhu inside. He went outside and said, there's no sadhu out there, there's a Muslim mendicant. So bring him in, and immediately Lord Chaitanya embraced him. Lord Chaitanya was very fond of Sanatana Goswami, and he was fond of embracing Sanatana Goswami. So Lord Sanatana knew that's what's going to happen when I get to Puri. Lord Chaitanya is going to want to embrace me, and I got this yucky stuff all over my body. So then he began to contemplate. He didn't tell anybody, he just contemplated, I should give up this body. It's just going to offend Lord Chaitanya. And so he made a plan that he didn't disclose to anybody, but Lord Chaitanya, being omniscient, knew. His plan was he would go to Puri, he would see Lord Chaitanya. In time for the Rath Yatra, he would throw his body before the wheel of Jagannath Rath Yatra cart and give up his body. And so that was his plan, unspoken plan, that he didn't disclose to anybody. And Sanatana Goswami was staying same place as Haridas Thakur. And each morning Lord Chaitanya would come to see Haridas, and of course Sanatana also. And then one particular morning, unprovoked by any conversation or anything, Lord Chaitanya slammed him. He chastised him very strongly. And I'm going to read that section. It goes back to text 55 of this chapter. My dear Sanatan, Lord Chaitanya said, if I can attain Krishna by committing suicide, I would certainly give up millions of bodies without a moment's hesitation. You should know that one cannot attain Krishna simply by giving up the body. Krishna is attainable by devotional service. There is no other means for attaining him. Acts such as suicide are influenced by the mode of ignorance. And in ignorance and passion, one cannot understand who Krishna is. Unless one discharges devotional service, one cannot awaken one's dormant love for Krishna. And there is no means to attain him other than awakening that dormant love. So now the verse that we're reading is how to awaken that dormant love. Measures like suicide are causes for sin. A devotee never achieves shelter at Krishna's lotus feet by such actions. Then he moves to the transcendental place. Because of feelings of separation from Krishna, an exalted devotee sometimes wants to give up his life, but by such ecstatic love, however, one attains the audience of Krishna, and at that time he cannot give up his body. One who is deeply in love with Krishna cannot tolerate separation from the Lord. Therefore, such a devotee always desires his own death. And he quotes Rukmini speaking like this. The circumstance is Rukmini had heard about Krishna, the daughter of King Bhishmaka, resided some distance from Dwarka, but she heard about Krishna. And by hearing about Krishna, she, unlike us, she developed intense love for Krishna. And then she got this bad news that her brother, Rukmi, she is Rukmini and his brother is Rukmi, he was envious towards Krishna. And although her father wanted, Bhishmaka, wanted her to marry Krishna, the elder brother didn't, the elder brother of Rukmini. So, poor father, he had this family conflict, and worst of all, Rukmi wanted his younger sister to marry Shishupal. No way! No way! But her father yielded to her elder brother. So she was in this quandary, poor girl. So she wrote a letter to Krishna. Please, she's describing beautiful, beautiful language. Her attraction for him, very, very direct, very, the shyness was gone. She was just very direct about her feelings. And then said, you may find this will be difficult, but here's a plan. She gave, she's a princess. She's a royal savvy. I'm under guard, but before the wedding, I'll go to the temple outside, and then I'll go from the palace to the temple, and on the way back from the temple, show up in your chariot and take me away. And if you don't do this, I'll just continue to perform austerities in this life to give up my body, and then even if it takes millions of lifetimes, still I'll not accept anyone but you as my husband. He's very fixed on Krishna. So the verse that's quoted, "O lotus-eyed one, great personalities like Lord Shiva desire to bathe in the dust of your lotus feet, to drive away ignorance. If I do not get the mercy of your lordship, I shall observe vows to reduce the duration of my life, and thus I shall give up bodies for hundreds of births if it is possible to get your mercy in that way." Very determined. And Lord Chaitanya goes on, "Give up all your nonsensical desires, for they are unfavorable for getting shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. Engage yourself in chanting and hearing then you will soon achieve the shelter of Krishna, without a doubt. And there's no qualification needed by birth. A person born in a low family, because he was considering not only his bodily condition, but he had been born in a Brahmin family, but had left that standard, at least at that time, to not accept service, or to speak of service in the Muslim king who was a bad guy. So he had become contaminated by that. So he was considering himself lowly because of that. A person born in a low family is not unfit for discharging devotional service to Krishna, nor is one fit for devotional service simply because he is born in an aristocratic family of Brahmanas. Anyone who takes to devotional service is exalted, whereas a non-devotee is always condemned and abominable. Therefore, in the discharge of devotional service to the Lord, there is no consideration of the status of one's family. Then he moves into connects that message with the next message. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is always favorable to the humble and meek, but aristocrats, learned scholars, and the wealthy are always proud of their positions. We heard something yesterday evening about the obstacle of pride, and we kind of got everybody fired up about understanding how we to see pride within us, because when you're proud, generally you don't see it. You're just proud. What? I'm good. What do you mean? So the next verse, very often quoted verse, 7th canto. If one is born in a Brahmin family and highly qualified, he's unfit for delivering himself or his family. And then conversely, one must be a pure devotee of the Lord. And if someone is low-born, swapacha, or chandala, a dog-eater, or something low-born, but he becomes a pure devotee, then he can deliver not only himself, but his whole family. So birth is not the qualification, devotion is the qualification. And the message prior to that is the humble and meek. Among the ways of executing devotional service, the 9 prescribed methods are the best, for these processes have great potency to deliver Krishna and ecstatic love for him. And then this verse in purport. Let's go forward here. Of the 9 processes of devotional service, the most important is to always chant the holy name of the Lord. If one does so, avoiding the 10 kinds of offenses, one very easily obtains the most valuable love of Godhead. He's giving us an alternative to Sanatana Goswami besides lamenting over his physical condition, abominable, pitiable, embarrassing physical condition. Here's the alternative: hearing and chanting, taking shelter in a humble and meek mood of the holy name. I think is the power of humility, emphasized specifically by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami. Now Sanatana Goswami was certainly feeling humble, because he didn't want to offend Lord Chaitanya, and he was ready to give up the dearmost thing to the living entity, the body, because his body was offensive, as Lord Chaitanya would want to embrace him. To smear that yucky stuff in the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, unthinkable. So give up the body. That was his contemplation. Certainly he was humble, but that humility, he wanted him to connect with devotional service. Devotional service in practical terms means senses, sense objects, connect with one another in the mood of trying to please Krishna by that effort in ways that are prescribed according to our teachings, our scriptures.
names